Hi, welcome to Fiberchats. My name is Irina. I'm the host here. My guest today is a fellow YouTuber and a person who is known on Instagram as the Black Knitter and also on YouTube, right?
Yes.
Dr. Liz Piatt. Welcome to my channel.
Thank you so much.
Well,
happy to be here.
If you notice like an increase in views on your channel, that's been me binge watching all your episodes. And I was like watching, I love doing that. Like I love interviewing YouTubers and I love watching from the very first episode and then skipping forward to like the latest episode, right?
Mm-hmm.
To me, this is very interesting because I can see how the person grows and changes from, the first episode becomes more comfortable and it's become, I mean, we all like, it's nobody's comfort zone to come to YouTube and like start talking to the camera.
Yeah.
But you had very clear vision from like day one. You wanted to create what you called a beloved community.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain that vision to me, to my viewers? Like, tell me more about it. Like, why is it important and what does it mean to you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, I've been a knitter for a very long time, but only really got active in the knitting community during COVID, because I was knitting a lot.
Right.
And so I started following more knitters on Instagram, on Facebook. I took my first class during COVID. And at the time, there was this discussion happening on Instagram about really how race was impacting people's experience in the fiber community in general. And I thought that as a sociologist, and as someone who describes himself as a follower of the way, that I could add something to that conversation, and just really create a space where people could learn, because I'm a teacher, and could ask questions, but also feel like they could be in a space that was safe.
Right.
Because as a Black person who is involved in the making community, I, like a lot of Black and Brown people, have had negative experiences. Up until the pandemic, I did most of my shopping in like big box stores, because every time I went into a local yarn shop, it was not a good experience.
Right.
And so many Black and Brown people have that story.
Yeah, and I hear that a lot actually, that, it's like there is almost this image of the local yarn store that if a guy walks in, it's immediately questioned. If a person walks in, it's immediately, there is some tension in the air, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did COVID change that in the sense that like a lot of yarn dyers were forced to close their stores or were forced to do more stuff online and promote them more online? So like my experience with Instagram has been that it was like an explosion of all the yarn dyers suddenly. Like I saw so many new to me dyers from like all over the world. Was that experience as well?
Yeah, so I have been really kind of overwhelmed with the number of makers that are out there on social media. And so I'm really surprised when people say that they have a hard time finding Black and Brown makers to support, because there's so many of them. I mean, if you're intentional about connecting with those people, it's really easy to do on social media.
Right. Well, tell me like your vision for the YouTube channel. When you started first, what did you think it's going to be?
I thought it was going to be a space where I could just let people know about Black and Brown makers, and things that they were doing that were really reflective of my experience as a Black person. I actually got really excited when I found out about, I think my first YouTube episodes were about um, uh, the Kwanzaa box that Chicken Coop Dye Works put together.
Yeah.
I was so excited to find out about that. And then shortly after that, I found out about Passion Knits Yarns Kwanzaa box. And, everybody, so many people do Advent calendars or kits or whatever during the winter season. And I've celebrated Kwanzaa for many, many years. And so I was really excited to see those. And so I just wanted to share that with other people. Like, look, here is something that is reflective of Black life and culture that is yarn related. So I just wanted people to know about that and bring those dyers to their attention. And shortly after I did those episodes, I went to a can retreat. I went solely with the purpose of meeting other Black and Brown makers. And it was so funny. It was a really cool experience, but I was the only person there. It was all virtual, but I was the only person in the space who was not a business owner. And in every session, I was like, I'm just here because I want to learn about all of you. And since that time, have just made it kind of my mission on the YouTube channel to give those people exposure.
Right. And you're like very clear about it on your channel. You do say from like get-go that it's not my business. I'm not looking to make money here. I just want to showcase some talent out there. And I feel like you and I have a lot in common in that respect, because this is what my channel is all about, right?
Yeah.
Spotlighting some maybe less known makers out there from like, I mean, I'm showing them from all over the world, right? And to me, it's very interesting meeting those makers, because like you would think that how much in common do we have this person who is like all across the world from me, right? But when you talk, you find that you have so much in common. And
so much. We have so much more in common than we have that makes us different from each other. Right. And I think we really need to be in conversation with each other more. There's a lot of sociological research that shows that people who engage with people who are different from them more actually they're less prejudiced. They're more open. They're just better people.
Right.
So it's a really good way to address some of the isms in our society,
When I'm watching your channel, when I'm watching your episodes, what I love, what makes it very unique for me is that, I mean, you are very unapologetically you, and you are a teacher through and through, and you make a point of teaching something every single episode. And sometimes it can be about the history of Kwanzaa. Sometimes it can be some of your church teachings. How do you plan what you're going to talk about?
Oh, gosh, I don't really plan very much. I really just, think about when I'm getting ready for an episode, and I haven't been that consistent about my episodes. I keep trying to, but then I get, more busy at work. So they keep giving me more things to do there. But I think about, what's happened since the last episode. Maybe if I've had the opportunity to, teach Sunday school or preach at a church service, what I did in those situations, and whether or not I think people might, get something out of it. I think about what's happening in the world at the time. So I really just think about what is relevant in the world. Have I read something or preached about something or studied about something in the Bible that's relevant to that thing that's happening in the world? or sometimes people have asked me questions. And so I try to address those. I don't spend a whole lot of time planning. I can just kind of think about, yeah, what's happening in the world. I'm all about context. I think context is really important. That's really not surprising given that I'm a sociologist, because that's all that's what we're most concerned about. I'm just really interested in what's happening around us and how people might be responding to that, and what I can say about what's happening that might help people learn or grow or ask more questions.
Right. Well, when I talk to teachers, I'm always curious, and it doesn't matter what kind of teaching they do. It can be knitting instructors, or it can be high school teachers, or anything in between, right? I'm always curious, what do they get out of this interaction with their students? Do they learn something from the students? Have you learned anything from your YouTube channel subscribers? Like, did they throw some interesting questions your way that made you think and made you grow as well?
Oh, that's a good question. One thing that I have learned in doing this work on my YouTube channel is that we are not as divided on issues as social media and the news media in general would have us believe.
Right.
So I have a wide spectrum of people who watch my channel. And I have been surprised at how much we have in common. And that's why I said, we really do have more in common than we have that's different. I think that at the end of the day, most of us want the same things. We want to live a life that is happy, where our families are safe and provided for, and where we can have meaningful relationships with people. The politics make us seem like we don't all want the same things. I really like what, I don't know if you know who Tyler Perry is. He is a director and producer and studio owner, actor. He's been in a number of films. But I think it might have been at an Oscars celebration a couple of years ago. It was during the pandemic. He was talking about how divided we seem as a nation. And he said, I want people to meet me in the middle. Because he was really responding to the division that he was seeing. And I've kept that in my mind since I've heard it. Like, most of us are in the middle.
Right.
And so I have really had the opportunity to engage with people who might think different from me politically, but are really more in the middle. Like, we really do have more in common. So I think that's been the most surprising thing for me. And it's really helped me kind of dig into this beloved community concept, which was something that Dr. Martin Luther King talked about a lot.
Right.
But it's a space where you center the love of humanity. Love comes first, above all else. And so it's my job as someone who believes in beloved community to approach everybody with love. And if you do that, you can't be mad at them.
Well, tell me a little bit, like you're saying you've been knitting for like years and years. Tell me, how did you learn to knit? Like, who was your teacher back then at the beginning? Let's go to the beginning.
The beginning. So my first experience with fiber arts was actually crochet. When I was in the first grade, my aunt, my mother's sister, who is left-handed like I am, taught me how to crochet. She taught me and my older sister. And I was a crocheter for many years. Um, but when I was in high school, I'm not sure what sparked the interest. I can't really remember. But I was about 16 years old and I said, I think I want to learn to knit. Um, but I didn't know anybody that knit. I didn't have money. You know, my family was pretty poor. And so I didn't have any resources. I had a couple of crochet hooks. I had some yarn. So I went to the library and checked out a book on knitting. And because this was before YouTube,
Right.
because I'm pretty old. Um, and I didn't have money for knitting needles. So I went rifling through my mother's kitchen, and she had some metal skewers, you know, that you use to make shish kebabs on the grill. I used those as knitting needles.
Well, I've heard people using pencils as well, like number two pencils. So anything, chopsticks, anything can be.
Oh yeah, chopsticks. But yeah, that's what I had. And so I used that book to teach myself how to knit. Um, and whenever I wanted to learn something new, I just checked out another book from the library.
Was it easier for you because you knew how to crochet? Was it easier for you to learn how to knit because it's like learning another language, but you understand the concept of another language?
I think so. I think being a crocheter did really help. Because I had a method for like holding the yarn and tensioning the yarn, things like that. So I think that did make it easier. So yeah, I think that definitely helped. I was also my grandmother was a very prolific quilter and sewer. And so she taught me how to sew pretty early on. And I was fortunate enough when I was in junior high, I was able to take a sewing course that lasted like all year long. And so I learned, and that was taught by an actual seamstress. That's what they were called back then. And learned a lot about sewing. So I kind of knew how to construct garments. And I think that helped as well, because in the beginning, I wasn't like using a pattern. I was just practicing knitting and purling.
Right. How did that change like over the years? Are you because like I see stuff you need, and some of it is like very simple sort of Netflix kind of knit, and some of it is like super complicated cabled kind of situation there. How do you decide like what you're gonna need, and how much do you like to challenge yourself when it comes to knitting?
When I first started knitting, and for a very long time, I was only interested in knitting things that were like accessories, mittens and scarves and hats, headbands, things that a lot of cowls, things that were really simple and fast.
Right.
And I'm not sure when that really changed for me. Maybe it was definitely before the pandemic. Oh, I know what it was. I just realized this. I was faculty at a small liberal arts college called Hiram College. It's here in Ohio. And one of my colleagues was a pretty prolific knitter. And she actually had in her office a cabinet full of knitting needles and yarn, because whenever a student came by her office and was interested in knitting, she pulled out some needles and some yarn and would start teaching them. She told me about Ravelry. And this was like in 2010. And so I really started exploring Ravelry. That like opened up a whole new world for me. Like, oh my God, there's all these patterns.
Right.
Now a lot of them are free. And there's so many designs. It was just kind of overwhelming, but wonderful at the same time. And so that really kind of opened up the world of knitting for me and all the things that you could do. Um, and by that time, YouTube was a thing. And so I started picking out patterns from Ravelry. And if there was something in the pattern that I didn't know how to do, I just looked it up on YouTube. And that was like my uh, mode of operation until the pandemic.
Well, I mean, since you being a teacher for so long, have you ever considered getting into the teaching of knitting and like becoming a instructor?
So I've started doing a little bit of that. Last I guess it was last fall maybe. The owner of my local yarn shop was actually looking for someone to teach learn to knit classes. And I was like, I think I could do that. I mean, I'm a pretty good teacher. I've been knitting a long time. I can teach other people how to knit. And so I started doing that. And I've also taught like a beginning hat class. So I've dipped my toe in a little bit. I don't know if I keep getting asked to do other classes besides Learn to Knit and a beginner hat class, but I've been kind of hesitant to do that.
Tell me why, because like I've been asked to teach classes and I just had this discussion with a friend of mine and he was like, you should teach how to knit sweaters. And I was like, I don't think I'm qualified to be that kind of teacher. And I told him like a local yarn store asked me to teach Shetland lace. And I was like, I'm more comfortable teaching that because like I know what I'm doing there. Whereas with sweaters, there's like so many variations that what if somebody's going to ask me something I don't know? What's your hesitation? Like, why wouldn't you teach?
So I think it's because even though I've been knitting for a really long time, I've only gotten into the more complicated stuff more recently. I mean, 2010 is not that recent, but for me, that's recent.
Right.
So like, knitting socks is a good example. I've knitted a number of pairs of socks over the years, but I've only recently like really kind of dug into like the architecture of a sock and really trying to understand how it's constructed and how you get the right fit, and really spending time, like ripping out when it's not looking the right way or fitting the right way and experimenting a lot with like different needle sizes and things like that. And so I feel like when it comes to knitting, in order to be able to teach it well, you have to really understand how things are constructed, how to fix mistakes, because beginners make a lot of mistakes. And they have to be okay with that. You have to be able to tell them, this is how you fix it. It's not a big deal. And if you really don't understand like how a knit stitch or a purl stitch is constructed, or how those stitches fit together, you can't help them with those mistakes.
Right.
And so, so when it comes to teaching like a sock class or a sweater class, I don't feel like I'm like at that level yet to be able to do that.
Are you a perfectionist in general, like when it comes to your own knitting?
I am not a perfectionist when it comes to my own knitting. There are mistakes in everything that I make.
I deeply believe,
and I'm okay with that.
Yeah. There was I actually read somewhere that like when the carpets were being made in Iran, they specifically left a mistake in it for good luck because it was like to prevent the evil eye from people looking at it and thinking that it's so perfect. So that's my approach to life as well. Like I keep a little mistake in everything I make.
Yeah. And I've actually told people that I've knitted things for gifts, because again, everything that I knit has a mistake in it. Actually show them where the mistake is. And I say, I'm showing you this because I want you to know that, because, especially when you give something to a non-knitter, they're like, oh my God, this is fantastic. This is great. Oh my God, how do you do this? I can never do this. I want them to know that it's not perfect. Everybody makes mistakes. And even when there's a mistake, you still have something that's beautiful and useful. You learn from that mistake. All those things are really important. So I always point them out.
Well, talking about gifts that you give, I looked through your YouTube channel again while I was looking through every single video. You do a lot of giveaways, and it's not just like a skein of giveaway. You give like, I don't know, like your entire yarn stash basically becomes a giveaway. Tell me like why you do it. Why is it important to you? What do you get out of it?
I, there are so many people who do fiber arts who aren't as blessed as I am to be able to buy whatever yarn they want, right? Their resources are limited. I'm in a position, I've been, doing what I do for a very long time. I make good money. So when I see something, I can afford to buy it. And I want to be able to share that with other people. I don't want resources to limit people's ability to experience something that I have that I find is really like exciting, colorful, feels good. So I give a lot of stuff away. Most of the actually until this year when I did the Black History Make Along, almost everything, with the exception of one or two things, was stuff that I had purchased myself. Right. People were so excited about this last Black History Make Along that they reached out and asked if they could donate some things, which was great. But I've always been somebody who volunteers my time, whether it's teaching time or serving the community in some kind of way. And that's just extended to my knitting. I even tell students who take my Learn to Knit class, I'm always your knitting teacher now that you've taken this class. So if you have a question, even after this class is over, just reach out and I'll help you. I'll meet you at the yarn shop or wherever. We can go have a beer, doesn't matter, and help you out. So that's kind of just been the way that I operate with lots of things. And I've got plenty of yarn back there.
I want to ask you something else that you share a lot about your family. You share like a lot of personal information. You share about the health of your dog and about your kids, what you're making for them and all these things, right? The car that you bought for your son and how you had to drive it home and all that. Guys, just go and like subscribe and watch. You're going to be entertained for hours. How is Mr. Black Knitter reacts to all your activity? And you call him that, not me.
I do. Yes. He is very supportive. I've actually been kind of surprised at how kind of into some of the stuff he's been. So if I want to go to a fiber festival, he's like, okay, let's go. And actually now we kind of have this thing where there's one fiber festival near where he grew up. It's the Wool Gathering, which is in Yellow Springs, Ohio. Mm-hmm. And so now we plan every year that weekend. We take the whole weekend. We stay at a hotel. near where he went to school. And we just make a whole weekend of it. We go to the Fiber Festival, and then we go traipsing around Dayton, Ohio, and just enjoying restaurants and museums and things like that. He is also he used to be a film major in college, and so he likes the video aspect. So whenever we do go to fiber festivals, he's taking over the camera.
You have a professional paparazzi at your disposal.
Yeah. He's helped with a lot of stuff regarding filming for my YouTube channel. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun doing some of this stuff with him, and he's learning more about yarn and knitting than he ever thought he would. I can't convince him to try knitting though.
You know what, I find it interesting because my husband has been also humoring me and going with me to all different kinds of fiber festivals. And I find him chit-chatting with some of the people there. Like I lose him in the crowd eventually. Like I talk to one person and then I turn around and I see he's in some deep discussion with somebody else there. And I think that people don't appreciate how much fun it is for non-knitter to go to those festivals because you get to see so many new to you things. You get to see what people wear, you get to see all the demonstrations, you get to see the animals, you get to taste the food, and it's just like a wonderful time for even if you don't craft.
Yeah, and my husband really loves the food that's available at fiber festivals. He loves talking to people, like your husband. Yeah, it's been really fun. And he actually also decided to try some dyeing as a result of going to a fiber festival with me. He saw someone who was selling like natural dyeing kits. So he was like, "Oh, let me try this," because he's really interested in like sciencey things, and it's all about chemistry, right? So we got one of those, and he did some dyeing here at home, and then my local yarn shop, Harps and Thistles, was offering a dyeing like workshop. So he went to that. He was the only guy, but he had a lot of fun. He's really proud of the dyeing that he did. I still haven't knit anything with it. He keeps asking me. So I need to pull it out and make him some.
About how you buying yarn, like when you go to yarn festivals, do you have and I've heard you saying this thing that I also said after, like last year, I said every time I'm gonna buy yarn, it's gonna be at least 2 skeins. It has to be 2 skeins because so many projects.
Yes.
I don't want to run out of yarn, and I can make so much with 2 skeins, and 1 skein is never enough. And I heard you say the same thing. But when you go shopping, do you have a project in mind when you buy yarn, or do you just buy it because it's fluffy and you like the color? What's your process?
Yeah. So I said I was going to start buying for specific projects. Hasn't happened yet. I really like just walking around and seeing the colors and the fibers. I'm still learning about different fiber contents, and how they feel in the hand. So I like just walking around and feeling the different fibers. And if it feels really nice or the color speaks to me, or the name speaks to me.
Yeah, I noticed that. You read all the names of the colors and you're like, oh, look at this.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a dyer, Marinated Yarns, I think, who has like this whole Star Wars line of colors. And it's like every time she comes out with a new Star Wars color, I'm like, oh, I gotta get that. Because we're all big Star Wars fans in our house. So yeah, the names get me.
I look at you, right? And you are a super busy woman. I mean, you're working crazy hours at university, and then you help so much at the church, and you preach, and you do Sunday school, and then you knit. Does knitting ever stress you out?
No, knitting always relaxes me. Um, and many years ago, my husband realized something about me and knitting that I didn't realize myself. He was like, I can tell when you're stressed because you knit more. So it does really relax me. I never impose like deadlines on myself to get things done. I've done things like say I'm gonna, knit something for somebody for their birthday. And if their birthday passes and it's not done, it's not a big deal. Like, I just say, this is coming.
I didn't specify which birthday.
Yeah. My brother and his wife are expecting their first baby at the end of June. And so I'm making some things for them. And they had a shower a couple of weeks ago, and all I had done was the sweater. But I, wrapped that and gave it to him and just said, there's more stuff coming, but this is all I have done right now. So I don't let it stress me out because it is my way to relax. And so when I get really busy at work, like I am right now, I'm still knitting every day. I'll pick up my needles in the morning before I go to work. Sometimes I take some socks or something with me to work to force myself to get away from my computer at lunchtime. Yeah, it's definitely my way to relax. I never let it stress me out. If I get asked to do a test knit, if I know I can't get it done in time, I just say, no, I can't do it because I don't want it to stress me out in that way.
Right. Well, I've heard this concept, and it's sort of like, I don't know if I'm at peace with that, but there is this whole thing of selfish knitting, right? When you knit for yourself versus knitting gifts for others. And nobody's like saying, oh, it's like selfish to play golf, right? Or like selfish something else, but like somehow knitting got this selfish reputation when you do it for yourself. What happens to the things you knit? Like, the majority of them end up in your wardrobe? Do you make most of the things for others? Is it half and half?
Most of my stuff ends up in someone else's hands, even when I don't intend it to. So I'll start knitting something, and I might be knitting it because I really like the pattern, or I just want to try something new. And, I pick the yarn because it's yarn that I really love. And I'll start off thinking, this is for me, like I'm going to wear this. It's going to be mine. But by the time I finish it, I've already decided that it belongs to somebody else. A lot of times, I will start a project not really knowing who it's for, and I just pray about it and say, who is this for? Who needs this at this time? And by the time I'm done, I know. So I give a lot of my knitting away. One of the things that I tend to keep is shawls, only because I love shawls. I love having something around my neck. And if I don't have a shawl on, I have some kind of like a pashmina or something. And so my friends over the years have gifted me tons of pashminas. So I have tons of them in different colors. And shawls are just, an extension of that. So I tend to keep those. And if I make one with some really special yarn, I tend to hang on to those. But even then, sometimes they end up in somebody else's hands. I knit a couple of hats recently, and I knew I was going to keep them, like they were for me. And then my mom came over a couple of weeks ago, right after I finished them. And I was like, I think these are for you, Mom. So she went home with two more hats.
I do that all the time as well. Like I love giving people gifts. Do people ever give you handmade gifts?
Oh, that is a good question. Handmade, not very often. I don't have a lot of friends who craft, um, which is really interesting. Um, and maybe that's why I give so much stuff away because I'm surrounded by people who just don't craft in that way. Um, that's something I'll have to think about. That is a really interesting observation. I don't have many like close friends that craft. My older sister crochets. But she has never gifted anything to me.
Okay,
Well, I haven't given her
can I
any.
send you a little gift?
Sure.
Okay. We'll talk after that. You're gonna give me your address and I'll send you. I feel like you should have a handmade gift from
Oh,
somebody.
thank you. Well, I've got stuff that I've made for myself. And people have gifted me yarn. Um,
Isn't that the best feeling ever when somebody gives you yarn?
yes, it is. It really is. Yeah, and I really think long and hard about what I'm going to make with it because I want it to be something special, and something that I'm going to keep.
Right.
So, like try and get this. I made this painted honeycomb shawl, and this yarn was dyed for me um, by the Lefty Knitter's husband, Johnny Bow.
Yeah.
He was dyeing yarn for a while. I don't think he's done it for a long time. But the first time I did the Black History make along, he dyed a bunch of skeins for me to give away as prizes. And I kept a couple of them. He said, keep some for yourself if you want to. So I said, I am. I saved two skeins and made that shawl. And it's one of my favorites. I wear it a lot. But when I started that project, I was like, this is for me. I'm not giving this away.
I've been trying to convince Akila and Johnny to come to my channel for a couple years now, so I'm still hoping.
Really?
They're just very busy.
Yes, they are. That would be a great episode.
Yeah,
they're fun.
We've met at Rhinebeck and I loved meeting them. They're like really nice couple.
Yes, very nice.
Well, what's on your needles now?
I have so many things, but I am working on a pair of socks, two at a time, toe up.
I'm impressed.
That's my favorite way to do socks. I am working on a test knit right now of a cowl that is secret, so I can't show it. What else am I working on? I'm working on the blanket to go with the sweater for my brother's baby. What else do I have on the needles? I'm still working on my Stephen West mystery shawl, yeah, from last October.
Well, you still have until next October to finish it, so it's totally fine.
Yeah, the first time, this is only my second time participating. And I did the same thing the year before. I started and didn't finish it until the spring. But I really, I like that his designs are kind of so funky and free. And I think this one I want to keep. The first one I gave away, my first one was Shawlography. And I finished it and I loved it, but I just didn't think it was for me. It was for somebody else. So I gave it away. But I think this one I'm gonna keep if I can finish it.
Oh, I'm sure you can. Well, you said that in your one of your episodes that you are definitely a process knitter.
Yes.
Do you care about like what you're making, or you just enjoy so much the process of knitting that it doesn't really matter?
I do care about what I'm knitting. It has to be something that keeps me engaged. Like I really like interesting patterns. Um, I mean, I have like my TV knitting. I tend to use socks and hats for TV knitting. Um, but I really like interesting patterns, patterns that are not so complicated that um, like I really have to focus.
Right.
But I like patterns that uh, have interesting cables or the pattern changes from section to section, just because that for me provides enough focus that I let go of other things that could be crowding my brain.
Well, you said you're not a planner. How big is your queue on Ravelry?
It's not very big because I don't use the queue like I should use the queue. I have a lot of patterns in my library. Um, but I haven't gotten organized enough with my knitting to actually plan, okay, I'm going to work on this and then this and then this. It just, I'm so distracted by new things that come out. And, I get a new yarn and I'm like, oh my God, I want to make something with this. So it's really hard for me, which is why I have a lot of works in progress right now. Some have been on the needles for months, but because I've got interested in doing other things, I've kind of just put them on the back burner.
Well,
So
I have a very difficult question for you. So I know you love going to the wine festivals and you like
I
wine.
do.
If the choice was to go to the yarn festival or to the wine festival, which one would it be?
That is a hard choice. So I have heard that there's actually a yarn crawl that happens in Napa Valley.
That's
I'm
like
gonna
so
do that.
perfect.
No, I'm gonna do that one day. Um, that is a very difficult choice for me. I don't know if I could decide. I think if I had to choose, I would cheat a little bit. I would go to the wine festival, but carry knitting with me so I could knit while I was tasting.
But I absolutely loved having you on my channel and getting to know you a little bit. And I loved watching your channel. So guys, please go to the Black Knitter channel, subscribe, click that like button, leave some comment, listen to the couple of the episodes and tell Liz what you think about it. Thank you so very much for being my guest today.
Thank you. This was great. Lots of fun.